and they get a drink, and they feed it right back into the system. There are bacteria that can travel. E. coli is classic for that. E. coli has a flagella on it. It works back and forth, puts itself right back up into the system. So every time these birds get a drink, they're re-inoculating your system with bacteria. And then we're good at doing it ourselves. We pump stuff into these systems all the time. Every time that medicator is going, it's pumping something into that system. What is it pumping into that system? A dead mouse, obviously not the greatest thing to be pumping into your system. An uncovered medicator bucket. We're short on time, so I won't go into my story, but we had a farm that she inadvertently left the lid off her medicator bucket. And over time, litter and dust had gotten into that medicator bucket, and she had warmth, water, and a source of food. So she grew nematodes, is what she actually grew. Not just bacteria, but nematodes. And nematodes are little soil worms. She grew them so well that they clogged up her water line, and her birds didn't get any water one day. And she had to go out and get family members out there, dropping water lines and flushing lines and popping off nipple drinkers. And when we went back to that medicator bucket, it was jam-packed with those worms. Just dosing worms into her birds just because she didn't cover her medicator bucket. So, we got that water line, and we think it's a pipe, straight shot from the beginning to the end, just shooting down the middle of the barn. But that's not what's happening in there. There is a lot going on in that water line. Left-hand side, you can see the cross-section of one of those typical nipple drinkers. There's a lot of crooks and crannies in there for stuff to hide in. You have got to have a cleaner that gets in there and really does a good job cleaning. Right-hand side, you've got a regulator, and if I can't find any bacteria anywhere in the system, I can go to that regulator, and that's where it'll be. Regulator has all kinds of turns and places for things to hide, and once you get algae growing in there, or once you get a biofilm growing in there, it is really difficult to get it out. Those regulators also have a rubber diaphragm in it. I think most of y'all know that. I do come across some growers that don't know there's a rubber diaphragm in there. To take that regulator apart, clean that diaphragm too. There's one of those diaphragms. So this was a turkey farm. They'd gone through a couple of flocks that had bordetella. It was causing mortality issues. And they had done everything they could to find it. And they cleaned down the walls. They could use the formaldehyde to clean the walls down even. You can see in the background, they scraped out the litter. They were getting desperate. And so last but not least, they got to the water. And we took the regulator apart, and sure enough, in that algae bloom that's on that diaphragm was the bordetella. So we cleaned them up. They didn't have any more problems with bordetella. Now the reason that water was the last thing that they thought of is because they had water lines that were less than a year old. So already you think, I'm not going to have much problem there. And then they were on city water. So they didn't think they had any water problems at all. And as a matter of, even for us, we were a bit stumped. But come to find out, what they had done is they used acids a lot. And they used acids for everything. So the use of those acids over and over and over had lowered the pH in their water. And when you lower the pH, it was killing some bacteria, but it was creating a great environment for algae to grow. And so they wound up with an algae bloom on their diaphragms. Got them cleaned up, they didn't have any problems after that. Sorry. So that was an obvious algae bloom, you can see that. There is also, people like to lump these together, but there's also a biofilm. And biofilms and algae blooms are two different things. A biofilm is a protective polysaccharide coating that is produced by certain bacteria. And different bacteria produce it in different ways. You can have a hard biofilm, or you can have a sticky, gooey biofilm. An algae bloom you can see pretty well. There are biofilms that are kind of sticky and gooey, but then you have the tricky biofilms that are hard and clear, and you don't know they're there. So even though your water lines look clean, they could have a biofilm built up in them. The plaque on your teeth is a biofilm, and you don't necessarily see that. The highest count I ever had on a farm was from a grower that told me he had squeaky clean pipes, and they did squeak. But when I tested them, highest count I ever got, because he had had that biofilm building for so long, it had just gotten hard as the PVC itself. So just because you can't see it doesn't mean you don't have it. What influences those biofilms? We add stuff to the system all the time. Feeds these biofilms. Vitamins, electrolytes, organic acids, Kool-Aid, Jello, sugar water. I have seen all kinds of stuff put in these to get these birds drinking, the trick to get them drinking. I've seen margarita mix put in so that the birds will drink. Pepto-Bismol was one that just kind of scarred me because I saw pink in the medicator bucket and I said, what in the world is in that medicator bucket? And his birds had diarrhea, so he gave her Pepto-Bismol. So vaccine and vaccine stabilizers, we're putting that in all the time. Antibiotics, that's going to become an issue, already becoming an issue in the States. That's going to move up the line. Lines, are we cleaning the lines after we use these products? No. Are we at least cleaning these lines when the barns are empty, when the facilities are empty? We've got time. This is just a quick graph to show you how quickly those bacteria grow when we're not treating it. We have to do an LT vaccine through the water line at the University of Arkansas. And so we did that, and we wanted to see how fast the bacteria grew. You see the brown circle there on the left just shows when we started the whole vaccine process. You know, we had citric acid, and we had stabilizer, and we had vaccine, and we come behind it with ivory. You got that whole week or 10 days or whatever of doing it. And we didn't have any bacteria when we started. After we fed them through this process, we got that red column of bacteria, and that is 585,000 colony-forming units per milliliter. So, when rural water systems get to you guys, they've got to have 100 parts per million or less bacteria in order for it to be considered acceptable for human consumption. So think about that, 100 CFUs per mil. They've got to have 100 CFUs per mil or less. So we're giving the birds 585,000 CFUs per milliliter. So a milliliter, about that much. Tip of that straw is a milliliter. Every time those birds are getting a drink, they're drinking over 500,000 bacteria. And we wonder, we put them on these vaccines, we give them the vaccine, and they just don't seem to get better. Well, we're giving them the vaccine, and then right behind it, we're giving them 500,000 bacteria on top of that. One Auburn study found active viable LT virus still living in the water line 21 days after its initial introduction. So think about that. That's 3 weeks after you have vaccinated these birds. They're still getting the vaccine. It's hiding in the biofilm because we're not cleaning the lines. So when we talk about what we're going to clean the lines with, the most common thing I see in the field is chlorine. Chlorine can be used effectively, but you've got to use it properly, and you've got to be aware of some of its drawbacks. It's readily used when it enters the system. Chlorine does not have a residual value to it. When it attaches to an organic, it oxidizes, and it's done. So if you've got a huge organic load, your chlorine is going to be used up fairly quickly, and it's never going to work its way through a biofilm. It's not very effective below 18 degrees Celsius. Where do you think that water is coming out of the ground right now? It's a lot lower than 18 degrees Celsius. And so if you're treating with chlorine, right when it comes out of the ground at the well, you're already ineffective. It's affected by pH. Chlorine has to have a low pH to be in its most active form, which is hypochlorous acid. So you need a water system that's at a pH of about 6. Like I said, it doesn't penetrate layers of organics. Chlorine is never going to work its way through a biofilm. It does not have the power to do that. And at the university, we started seeing bacterial resistance. So if we had farms that had just used chlorine, we would have them get off of chlorine for a few flocks, and then they could get back on it later on. And for the breeders, it would just be one cycle. How does pH affect chlorine? What you're looking for if you're using chlorine is hypochlorous acid, and that's what's in those red bars. So your goal is to get down into a low pH. You see along the bottom line, 5 and 6 is a good pH to be in if you're going to use chlorine. And I always warn people, you look at it, you say, well, heck, 4 is awesome. So why don't I just get down to 4? Well, there's a lot of equipment companies that will void any warranties on your equipment if you keep a continuous pH of 5 or below. So that's why I stop at 6. It's pretty active at 6 anyway. Acids. Second most common thing I see out there that people use to clean their water lines. Acidifiers are not complete line cleaners. They're really meant to descale your lines. That's what they're originally intended for, is to descale your lines, which means to get rid of all the minerals in your lines. Now, they have evolved to clean these lines as well because they do kill a lot of bacteria. When you lower the pH, a lot of bacteria cannot survive that. But when you do that, you also set up a great environment for particular yeasts, fungus, algae, and molds to grow. And not only have you set up a good environment for this, but now you killed off their competition. So they're really going to flourish in this. And it is inevitable, if you are using acids as the only thing to clean your water lines or to treat your water, it may be 2 months, maybe 2 years, you are going to get a fungal bloom. It's going to happen to you. That's a fungal bloom. This group had used acids over and over and over. They used it for feed change. They used it when the birds were flushing. They used it when the wind blew from the southwest. Anytime they used acids to fix everything. And then they never cleaned their lines. So they wound up getting all this stuff in their nipple drinkers, clogging up their nipple drinkers, and they're not even cleaning their line right there. All they did was turn the flush system on, and that flushed out of their line. That's what was clogging up their drinkers. And it's because of the acid use. So I know we're going to use acids. When those birds flush, we are going to put them on vinegar. And I'm not saying not to do that. But you got to come behind it to treat your water lines with something. Even while the birds are in there, you can do that. You can come behind it and treat the water lines and treat the water so you don't wind up letting the algae and the fungus grow. The line on the left was cleaned with an acid. We wanted to demonstrate visually the difference between an acid being used as a line cleaner and proxy-clean or an appropriate line cleaner being used. So at the university, we did a little test on the left-hand side. We cleaned with an acid. We came back the next day and we cleaned with 3% proxy-clean on this right-hand side. So you see how much stuff is coming out of that water line. How much more stuff got knocked loose and cleaned out of that water line. That's the same water line. It's just the next step. So you see what the acid left behind.